In today's gospel, Jesus instructs us to love our enemies, to do good to those who hate us, to bless those who curse us, and to pray for those who abuse us. Now, that is counterintuitive to the point of being absurd. Why on earth would you love people who want to curse and abuse you? And not just that, who want to deny and even obliterate your very existence. Loving your enemy is, I believe, the single hardest lesson the Bible teaches us, and yet it is one of the most important ones we need to learn, even if you have to learn it the hard way, as I did. Early on in my career as a television news producer, I was assigned to arrange the first public discussions ever between Israeli Knesset members and Palestinian leaders. My specific job was to get the Palestinians to talk to the Israelis, and another producer was assigned to get the Israelis to talk to the Palestinians. My job was harder. And when those discussions finally happened on ABC Nightline, they were credited with creating a psychological breakthrough that enabled subsequent peace negotiations in Madrid and in Oslo. But a book written by a colleague of mine largely credited that accomplishment to somebody else, trivializing my contribution. I was devastated. I felt I had been robbed of something that I poured my heart and soul into achieving, and I worried about my dad. I know now and knew then that he loved me very much and that he sacrificed a great deal for my brothers and me. But let's just say that he was not the kind of father who celebrated his children's accomplishments. So I had hoped that this book would provide him with a validation of my worth. Instead, it was a source of humiliation. And in the days before social media, there was nothing that I could do about it. I didn't sleep well for 2 years after that, torturing myself with what I should have said or done to have changed the outcome. Then, one evening, I was watching Diane Sawyer do an interview on her program, Primetime Live. She was interviewing a couple whose daughter had been raped and murdered by 4 of her classmates. The perps were now in prison, but the parents were helping one of those boys get his college degree while incarcerated. Diane, like many of you listening to this, was incredulous. How could these parents possibly be helping somebody who had raped and murdered their daughter? The mother responded that the one boy they were helping had expressed what they felt was sincere remorse about what he had done. But then she said something that changed my life. She said forgiving him was something she needed for herself. That her anger and resentment towards the boys who killed her daughter was essentially destroying her from within. I went online to see if I could find the exact quote from her, because this interview is from 30 years ago. I didn't find it, but to my surprise, I found interviews with a number of other people who had also forgiven the killers of their loved ones. And although their circumstances were very different, they kept using the same word: liberation. Forgiveness had liberated them from the anger and the hate that consumed them. I didn't know this at the time, but the internal corrosion people feel when they harbor hate isn't a metaphor. It is real, and there's a physiological basis for it. When you are under great stress, for example, when a tiger is chasing you, your body releases a hormone called cortisol, which enables your fight or flight response. That is an evolutionary response that has allowed our species to survive to this day. But when you are under constant stress, When you are filled with hate and anger all day, the excess cortisol attacks your body. It damages your immune system and it makes you more vulnerable to heart disease and to dementia. It literally shortens your lifespan. Holding hate in your heart is a death by slow motion suicide. So I reestablished communication with the author of that book. I went to her wedding. I started sleeping normally again. And in the course of my work for ABC, I also got to meet Nelson Mandela. Mandela had been in prison for 27 years for his work to free South African blacks from the chains of apartheid. When he was released, he was elected president of South Africa, and he established a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Mandela took both parts of that title seriously. The truth about the horrors of apartheid was revealed, but there was no campaign of retribution against the people who had caused him to suffer so much and for so long. He was a patriot who understood that to succeed in managing South Africa, he would need to cast aside his own grievances and to work with his former enemies to build a better future for his country. So what does that mean? That as we are attacked and abused by those who hate us, we do nothing? Does love your enemy mean that we just lie down and let our enemies roll over us? No, what are you kidding? We fight back with every legal means we've got. John F. Kennedy famously said, "Don't get mad, get even." I agree with half of that. He's right. He's right about don't get mad. And that's the point of this homily. Getting mad corrodes you. It exhausts you. It leads you to bad decisions. So he's right, don't get mad. But the get even part, I don't agree with. It has this ugly whiff of retribution, of retaliation. So my version of that would be, don't get mad, get active. Strategize, march, write letters, make phone calls, support the organizations that are suing to prevent the reversal of your rights. Use all the tools that the U.S. Constitution grants us citizens to assure that your representatives represent your views. And this is very important. Talk to your neighbors who don't agree with you politically. When I worked at ABC, an expert on cults told me, you cannot forcibly remove people from a cult. It only reinforces the cult leader's narrative. Instead, you have to provide them with an alternative to the narrative that they hear from their leader. Your narrative, your life story. Study after study shows that people who have LGBTQ plus people in their families or as neighbors are much less likely to support policies that attack us. Now is the time for our community to build bridges rather than to burn them. I have a friend who loves to quote Viktor Frankl, a Jewish psychiatrist who managed to survive 4 different concentration camps. The quote she always cites is this: between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. My friend has stage 4 breast cancer. And her response to her cancer is to confront it directly, to learn everything there is to know about the cancer itself and the treatments for it. If a treatment works for a while, great. When it stops working, she moves on to the next treatment dispassionately and without drama. Because drama, rage, and fear come at a cost to her. They burn energy in a way that's counterproductive, so she has instead chosen to save her precious energy for better things. She's a filmmaker, and that attitude has enabled her to produce the finest work of her career. We can all learn a lesson from my filmmaker friend. The way she deals with her cancer is the way we can deal with the cancerous hate that is spreading throughout the country. And although it's a very scary and troubling time for our community, we've been through times like this before. And right now, we have the space and the ability to choose our responses. We can still rely on the power of the law. We still have the opportunity to choose our representatives. We still have one another. And we still have the power of our joy. In the same way that anger and hate corrode your body, joy replenishes and rejuvenates it. My friend has found that joy in her work, in her family, and her friends. I find my joy in dancing and in cheesecake. Those things, you know, they cancel each other out. But. So that's where we are. With the understanding that we are in a marathon, we're going to win some and we're going to lose some, and the ones we lose will hurt. But we cannot afford to sit on the sidelines, even if we have to take breaks from time to re-energize. And there is one advantage we have that is not to be discounted. We are not fighting from a place of hate. We are fighting from a place of love. We have learned to love ourselves. We love our families and our friends, and our fight is to protect them and to protect the gains that we fought so hard to obtain over the last 50 years. And we are fighting because we love our country and the principles upon which it was founded, that there shall be no king, that our elected representatives are accountable to the citizens who put them there and not the other way around, that we have freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, and that there is a separation of church and state. And most important, that the rule of law is paramount in the United States of America, and no man is above the law. And so we fight. But in doing so, let us liberate ourselves from the self-destruction of hate. Like Mandela before us, we will speak our truths, but then we must find a path to reconciliation. So let us do as Jesus instructed. Bless those who curse us, and pray for those who abuse us. Loving our enemy is the hardest lesson in the Bible, but it is the lesson that right now we most need to learn.